Imagine a world before history books, before kings wrote their victories, before humanity even understood what war truly meant. Now imagine that the very first war was not sung by poets or passed down through legends, but carved into clay and stone, waiting thousands of years to be discovered. Nearly 4,700 years ago, in the land between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers, ancient civilizations clashed in a conflict so important that it became the earliest recorded war in human history. This was the war between Sumer and Elam, around 2700 BCE. At this time, Sumer was home to the world's first cities, the first written language, and the earliest known kings. Just east of Sumer lay Elam, a powerful rival rich in resources and ambition. These were not primitive tribes fighting randomly. They were organized societies with armies, rulers, and gods they believed protected them. What makes this conflict extraordinary is not just the fighting itself, but the fact that Sumerian scribes documented it using cuneiform writing on clay tablets. For the first time, war was no longer a forgotten event. It became history. This single conflict marks a turning point when violence, power, and ambition were officially recorded, shaping how future civilizations would remember and justify war. Long before nations, empires, or borders as we know them today, the world was organized around river valleys. One such region was Mesopotamia, the fertile land between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers, where the Sumerians built the world's first cities. Uruk, Urkish, and Lagash were not villages, but advanced urban centers with temples, irrigation systems, and written administration. Writing itself had already been invented, not for poetry or philosophy, but for accounting, trade, and control. Sumer was a civilization built on order, records, and divine authority. To the east lay Elam, in what is now southwestern Iran. Elam was different in geography but equal in ambition. Its land was rich in stone, timber, and metals resources that Mesopotamia lacked. For years, Sumer and Elam were connected through trade. Goods moved across borders, merchants traveled between cities, and cultural influence flowed in both directions. But trade also brings dependency, competition, and eventually tension. In this early world, city-states were fiercely independent. Each city had its own ruler and its own patron god. Power was measured not only by wealth, but by divine favor. Control over trade routes, resources, and sacred prestige mattered deeply. As populations grew and cities expanded, pressure increased. Boundaries were unclear, alliances fragile, and trust limited. There were no international laws, no treaties enforced by neutral powers. Disputes were settled through intimidation, raids, or outright violence. What made this era unique was that people had begun to record events systematically. Scribes wrote not to preserve truth, but to preserve authority. This meant that when conflict finally erupted between Sumer and Elam, it was not lost to time. The stage was set for humanity's first recorded war, emerging from a world already tense with rivalry, ambition, and the belief that the gods themselves chose winners and losers. The first sparks of war often come from ambition mixed with opportunity, and this ancient conflict was no different, according to Sumerian records. Elam launched an invasion into Sumerian territory around 2700 BCE. This was not a minor border clash. Elamite forces pushed deep into Sumer, attacking key cities and challenging Sumerian dominance in the region. One of the most shocking events recorded was the capture of a Sumerian ruler from the city of Uruk. In ancient Mesopotamia, capturing a king was not just a military victory, it was a cosmic one. The king was believed to rule by divine mandate. His defeat suggested that his god had abandoned him. Elamite forces reportedly plundered temples and carried away sacred statues, an act considered deeply humiliating and spiritually dangerous. To the Sumerians, this was more than warret, it was sacrilege. Gods were not symbols, they were living powers. Stealing a god meant stealing protection, identity, and legitimacy. Such an act demanded retaliation. The invasion disrupted trade routes, destabilized political balance, and sent shockwaves through Sumerian city-states. What makes this invasion historically critical is that it was documented. Scribes etched these events into clay tablets using cuneiform writing. For the first time, war was described in terms of cause, action, and consequence. Elam was portrayed as the aggressor, the violator of divine and political order. This moment marks a turning point. Violence was no longer temporary or forgotten. It was recorded, interpreted, and preserved. The Elamite invasion forced Sumer to respond not only with weapons, but with unity, leadership, and a narrative that would define how future wars were remembered. In response to Elam's invasion, Sumer needed leadership. And history gives us one of the earliest named warrior kings, in Mesopotamia of Kish. His name survives not through legend, but through inscriptions, making him one of the first historically attested rulers connected to warfare. And Mesopotamia did what few before him had done. He organized a large-scale counterattack beyond city boundaries. Unlike earlier skirmishes, this response was deliberate and strategic. Forces were gathered from multiple city-states, suggesting early military coordination. Farmers became soldiers, armed with spears, shields, and simple bronze weapons. There were no professional armies, but there was discipline, leadership, and purpose. And Mesopotamia led his forces eastward into Elamite territory. This was a bold move. Crossing borders to punish an enemy marked one of the first recorded offensive campaigns in history. According to Sumerian texts, Elam was defeated and its power temporarily broken. The victory restored Sumerian prestige and reclaimed stolen honor. More importantly, this campaign established a powerful precedent. Kings were not just administrators or priests, they were military leaders. Victory in war became a source of legitimacy. And Mesopotamia success strengthened the idea that a ruler chosen by the gods must also prove himself on the battlefield. This chapter of the war demonstrates the birth of organized warfare. Strategy, leadership, and recorded victory all appear together for the first time. War was no longer chaos, it was policy. Once that idea was written down, it could be copied, repeated, and refined by every civilization that followed. Warfare in 2700 BCE was brutal, personal, and direct. There were no complex formations, no cavalry, and no advanced siege engines. Soldiers fought on foot, often with minimal armor. Weapons were simple but deadly: spears with bronze tips, stone or copper daggers, wooden shields covered with leather, and slings that could break bones from a distance. Armies were not permanent institutions. Most soldiers were farmers, craftsmen, or laborers called to fight during times of conflict. Battles were seasonal, often occurring after harvest, when men could leave their fields. Discipline came from fear of punishment, loyalty to the city, and belief in divine protection. Tactics focused on intimidation and shock. Armies advanced in tight groups, shouting, beating shields, and invoking their gods. Battles were short but violent. Casualties were high because there was little medical knowledge and no formal treatment for wounds. Cities were the real targets. Burning crops, destroying walls, looting temples, and capturing prisoners were standard practices. Psychological warfare mattered as much as physical victory. Defeated city might lose its god, its ruler, and its independence. What is remarkable is how recognizable these patterns still are. Control territory, break morale, display power, and record victory. The tools were primitive, but the logic of war was already fully formed. In these early battles, humanity defined a blueprint for conflict that would echo across millennia. The war between Sumer and Elam matters not because it was the largest or the deadliest, but because it was remembered. It was written down. This act alone changed everything. Writing transformed war from an event into a narrative. Victories could be claimed, enemies blamed, and rulers immortalized. For the first time, power justified itself through recorded history. Kings used inscriptions to show divine approval, military strength, and legitimacy. War became a political tool, not just a survival response. Borders gained meaning. Enemies gained identity. This conflict also marked the beginning of propaganda. The Sumerian version survives, telling us who was right, who was wrong, and who the gods favored. This reminds us that history, from its very first lines, was shaped by those who wrote it. Most importantly, this war set a pattern. Every conflict that followed, empires rising, cities falling, nations for men, can trace its logic back to these early tablets. Humanity learned not just how to fight, but how to remember fighting. From clay tablets to digital screens, the story of war has never stopped being written. And it all began here, between Sumer and Elam, when humanity first decided that war was worth recording for eternity. Nearly 5,000 years ago, when the world was still young and history itself was being invented, humanity recorded its first war in clay. The conflict between Sumer and Elam was more than a battle of armies. It was the moment when power, ambition, and violence were preserved in writing for the first time. Those ancient tablets remind us that war has always been tied to leadership, belief, and the desire to be remembered. Civilizations rose, borders were challenged, and kings proved their authority, not only through rule, but through victory. What began as a struggle between two early societies became a blueprint for every conflict that followed. From ancient empires to the modern world, the logic of war control, retaliation, and legacy has remained strikingly familiar. These early scribes could not have imagined how long their words would survive, or how often humanity would repeat the same patterns they recorded. If you found this journey into humanity's earliest battlefield meaningful, make sure to support the channel by hitting the like button and subscribing for more deep, untold stories from ancient history. More forgotten wars, lost civilizations, and powerful moments from the past are coming soon.